Hey, welcome to Mighty Monday. This is your host, Mae Renfroe. And as always, I am excited about my Mighty Mondays where I have guests that come on and just share their stories of things they've gone through and what God's done in their life and how they're helping others. And so tonight I have another great guest, Valerie Jackson. This is welcome, Valerie, to tonight. And I am excited what you're going to share with us um, that you are a dedicated advocate for empowering women and mothers of school age children to triumph over trauma and grief and embrace a life of peace and fulfillment. I like that.
Thank
That what you're doing. Yeah. It says you're a certified professional life coach and speaker and a facilitator and author, and you lead what's called the Voice of New Beginnings coach and training. So, like I said, did you share that what you're doing and just kind of yeah, who you are, what you do, and what brought you to doing this. So, yeah, good evening, Billy. How are you doing?
I'm great, May. Thank you so much for having me on tonight. I really appreciate that. I believe I'm a believer, and I feel that whenever we go through something in life, there's always a lesson to be learned. And it's what we do with that lesson that matters and makes the difference for us. And so that's what I
Yeah.
wanted you and your listeners this evening, the journey that I went through, the healing journey, and how I used all of my past experience as a certified professional life coach who also has trauma training in trauma informed care, trauma awareness. I have also a background in early childhood education where I have worked in pre-K counts programs in the past, had the opportunity to see how young children develop, what impact things have on them and their
Mhm,
development.
mhm.
And I've combined that with my own parenthood as I have had
Mhm.
three biological children and one bonus child, and seeing how they develop. And as the things have happened in my life, how certain things can have an impact on our children through their developmental journeys.
Mhm. Wow. That's yeah, really exciting and very needed. That a lot can relate to. And I know for my own journey so far in my parenting too, being a mother of 10 and having gone through child loss as well. So yeah. Well, I look forward to sharing more and kind of getting into your story then.
Well, thank you. So, where do I begin?
Yeah.
Well, it's funny. One thing that I will say is I believe that the path that we take is not by accident. And when I look over my career journey, what I've noticed that every step that I've taken has actually prepared me for the next step. And it has then helped to enhance my own parenting, which now then I take all of those experiences, both the lived experience and the professional experience, and use that to help others on their journey, whether it's through the individual or group life coaching that I offer, whether it's
Mhm.
speaking on platforms, coaching, or facilitating workshops. I started out when I graduated high school many moons ago. I somehow stumbled into foster care and casework, working with teens,
Mm.
young children. And then I went to work in a psychiatric hospital. So I've had that background of leading
Oh
groups
wow.
and working there doing assessments in the emergency room when people come in for psychiatric care, kind of going through that. And then, like I said, I took a hiatus with one of my children, kind of stepped out of the field for a while because
Okay.
your first, I just really wanted to be there for her. And I was blessed enough to be able to have that opportunity.
Yeah.
I kind of started missing work. So then I went back in the field later, many years later, had other children. And then I ended up working in a pre K counts program and a community engagement program where I kind of looked for community leaders and fostered those connections and helped to kind of contribute to grant writing for pre-K counts programs to help enhance the educational experience of preschool and school age children. Then I continued in the mental health journey and eventually, as a result of much tragedy and loss in my life, ended up
Mhm.
let me do some life coaching. But all of that contributed because one,
Mhm.
I did end up having a special needs child, and it was through all of that educational experience that really helped me to gain skills and knowledge to help advocate for my son. and to help get not only the services that were needed, but to help provide some of those interventions in the meantime. So it's been a journey. Like when you're a parent and you have every child is different. They come from the same parent, unless you're adopting, but like you all, they have the same basic genes in them. But what I've learned through personal experience and through my profession is that although I've given birth to 3 children, they're all very different. The experiences that I've had in my life during each of those pregnancies have an impact on the child because their experience starts in the womb.
Mm.
And I
Mhm.
noticed, like, for example, my one child, when I was pregnant, I lost my dad. Um,
Mm.
both my husband and myself, we ended up getting downsized from our positions. We had a lot of different moving parts going on. My father in law was sick. My husband was in a car accident that ended up totaling our vehicle. And so all of that played a part in his development. And I
Mhm.
think that of all of my children, that was the one particular child where I dealt with all of those things. And that is the child that needs the most structure, that needs the most help. So I've learned to look at my children individually. A lot of parents will say, well, if you do for one, you have to do for all. It's not fair. That's not true. You do your children and yourself an injustice when you treat them all the same.
Mm.
You treat them equitably, but you don't
Mhm.
equally because they're different and they have different needs.
Mhm.
And through that, that
Mhm.
was hard. That was something that, I really had to work through because when you're seeing your child and it's like something's quite not right here, that's stressful for a parent. And it's hard because everybody wants their children to all, just fit right in and everything be this beautiful picture, but life isn't always that way. And then you fast forward
Mhm. Mhm.
down that to what really put me on this journey was when I first dabbled in it. Like I said, I was downsized and then later on I left a job because it became very stressful and demanding and just there were so many factors in there that let me know that you know what, it's time to move on. And it also happened to be at a time where we were relocating, so it was just perfect timing and in God's perfect plan. So we had to uproot our family to another part of the country 600 miles away, but I had already written a proposal to do a presentation. I was accepted. So I'm like, okay, I don't work here anymore. What am I going to do? Because I'm no longer representing that agency. And God had already been dealing with me about, you know what, I want you to reach out and help others. So I prayed and I'm like, it's the voice of new beginnings. So that's how I learned.
Mm.
Really, God gave me the name, and as I'm walking, God gave me an image of the logo and everything. So as I'm walking to a printer, I'm like, okay, what do I do? Because I did the presentation. People were like, oh, what do you do? How can I get in touch with you? I want to really work with you. At the time, I was working with an assistant attorney general of a particular state, and we did a trauma training on overcoming trauma. And so then that transferred later then to after I moved and relocated. I took time off to really settle my family, but it was difficult because in the midst of a move over 600 miles away, people and my former community and close family members were passing away. And soon as
Mm.
I did that in the midst of moving because we had to move a business. My husband and I have a party rental business, so we had to move all of that. And we had to move our family in the midst of all these losses. So we're back and forth, back and forth.
Mhm.
Finally, we get settled in and we're thinking, oh, great. Then COVID hit.
Mm. Oh,
Now
yeah.
it's like we're in a whole new community. Even though my children were young, one was just entering kindergarten, the other was going into first grade. You're taking them away from everything. And now it's like, wow, we've moved away, so we no longer have the family support that we had. We're in a whole new environment, and now suddenly everything is shut down.
Mhm.
So we had to work through that. But before that happened, I'm getting a little bit off my timeline, so excuse me. First, we relocated. People were passing away. We finally get through that. Holiday season comes. This was the order of it. It's like, oh, yes, we're in the holidays, and my family was about to come visit us for the very first time. And I'm calling home and I'm like, hey, let's get together. Can you guys come sooner? Can you come sooner? Because I had a brother who, he lived a life of battling drug addiction
Mm.
and to really come. And I'm thinking I was making all of these plans about him. I prepared
Mhm.
Christmas Eve dinner. I had already pre-cooked some of the Christmas dinner for the first time in my life. Everything was packed, wrapped, and hidden in a box. And
Mhm.
so excited. And I'm going
Mhm.
Christmas shopping. Suddenly it's my phone, and all I hear is Stephen's dead. I literally thought
Mm.
something wrong because I looked at my phone, and like when you get a call, you see
Mhm. Mhm.
the call didn't register for some reason. So I was like, man, that was
Mhm.
really. So I'm there shaking, and I'm getting ready to call home, and then my other brother calls and is like, "Are you okay?" So I just totally lost it because here I am now in a new town. Nobody's around. I'm in the middle of the street because I'm out Christmas shopping and doing different things affiliated with the holiday, only to find out 2 days before he was supposed to come, my brother passed away of an overdose.
Mm.
Ugh, that to me was devastating because we were
Mm.
close in age. We were not even quite 2 years apart in age. He was my brother, but he was very much like a son to me because even though I'm the younger sister, as the sister, I was the go-to. It was like, "Hey, Valerie, where's mom? Hey, Valerie, where's this? Hey, Valerie, can you this?" And so I was always there. And all I kept thinking is, so for the first time in my life that I'm away from my family, and of all the overdoses, the one that I'm not there for is the one that takes his life. So that was
Mm.
hard. I dealt with a lot of guilt because I was praying that
Mhm.
particular. I was like, God, give Stephen total and complete freedom today in Jesus' name.
Mm.
But I didn't say here on earth. So in my mind, because I didn't say on earth, for months, I carried guilt thinking that I was responsible for my brother's overdose because I wasn't specific in my prayers.
Oh.
I really, really spiraled downward, and I want to pause and take note. If you've noticed, I've mentioned my brother's name several times. That's one of the ways that I pay tribute is we feel like when to mention the deceased person's name is taboo.
Mhm.
But when we mention their name, it keeps them alive. It
Mhm.
keeps their memory
Yeah.
alive. So I want to point that out. That's a little tip for those of you who are going through grief. When you
Mhm.
lose a, it's okay to say their name. When you're talking to people who've lost a loved one, it's okay to say their name. When you say their name, you're reminding the person that you care about that person. You're reminding the person that you notice that their loved one was significant.
Yeah. Yeah. I totally agree. Yeah.
Mm, yeah.
That
Go ahead.
I've had that same experience. Yeah, it means a lot. Yeah.
Yeah. So, like, after I dealt with that grief, it was really hard because instead of my family coming here for Christmas and visiting me for the first time, some of them, I ended up having to go back home yet again.
Mm.
But it was a very different experience. And so, even in that, I saw the goodness of God because whereas I had planned and cooked the Christmas Eve dinner, I had prepared Christmas dinner and breakfast and different meals for while they were going to be here. Instead, I packed all of that up, took it back to my family's home, and some of it actually served as the meal for the repast. And so we just transferred
Oh,
time in my life. I had
yeah.
ready for Christmas. Things were wrapped. So when we got the call, we didn't have to worry about, are the kids going to miss Christmas because we had young kids.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
looked at the box that literally had every Christmas gift in it except for one thing, which was actually on a delivery truck for my brother who passed
Oh,
away.
okay. Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah. That was hard. My husband sat in the driveway for that Amazon truck, and then as soon as the Amazon driver came, handed it, he delivered it to us, and we took off down the highway.
Yeah.
After going and getting through that, that was really hard. So my husband and my kids came back. I stayed for I guess about a month, and then right after I got back, COVID hit.
Oh, okay.
So I just was like literally
Oh,
thrown off, and I couldn't function. I was not present for my husband. I wasn't present for my children. I would put on a smile. Like before they started shutting down schools, I would put the smile on, get them on the bus, get them out to school. And then I would literally just sit on the sofa and cry all day until one day I had so much pain. It felt like an elephant was sitting on my chest and I couldn't breathe. And I'm like, God, I need you to take this away. And I just prayed and cried out to God. And I audibly heard him say, I took Stephen. I didn't take you. What are you going to do with the rest of your life?
Mm.
It was amazing. I will never forget it because it was literally like something lifted. But there were things that I had to do in the meantime.
Mhm.
I understood from my background that I needed to cause a shift in my atmosphere. There's a song
Mhm.
that sometimes you have to encourage yourself. Sometimes you have to speak victory during the test. No matter how you feel, speak the words and you will be healed.
Mm. Oh, wow.
Worship songs that helped me in the past, and I just put them on play and began to let that music play in my environment. I recalled some words that my dad said when we were children, and it's amazing how when you get a message at one point in life and you get it later, it changes meaning. Because
Yeah.
as a child, dad used to always say, every man is born but to die. Our days are appointed. We are to live our lives in a way that gives God glory. And after that, we're called back to Him. And I couldn't understand how He was
Oh,
so
wow.
would die. And He's like, they did what they were supposed to do. Their steps are
Yeah.
ordered. Are you? And I'm like,
Yeah.
heck, how could you say something? And these were people that were close when we were growing up.
Yeah. Yeah.
But in the midst of that grief, I heard my dad saying that. It was just like playing over in my mind. And that helped me. I'm like, you know what? Stephen only lived to be 50. But in those 50 years, he did so much with his life. And at his service, the church was packed and people were saying what a difference he made. And some people were like really distraught. They were like, I don't understand. How could that happen to Steve? He's the reason why I'm not on drugs anymore. He's the one who got
Yeah.
me.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
I had to flip the way that I was really looking at that. And when you
Yeah.
talk experience, it had to kick in because one thing that I learned is like I can choose to focus on the fact that he is gone, or I can choose to focus
Mhm.
on the fact that in his appointed years, he made a difference. And even though he couldn't break free,
Mhm.
he was able to lead others. And I could also choose to focus
Yeah.
on the fact that my brother is gone, or I can choose to look at the fact, praise God, that I had a brother
Yeah. Yeah.
and that I still have young children who very much need me, and I had daughters who needed me. Our daughters are adults, and I have a husband who loves me and who's made sacrifices for me. So, am I going to neglect him, or am I going to be the wife that God called me to be for him in spite of it, and
Yeah.
hold on to faith and let that pull me up and start using the tools that God has given me all of those years through all of those jobs that I had. Am I going to start using those and activate the faith that was already in me? Or do I go down this road of grief and pity and let it hold me down? And so
Mhm.
the choice to get up and to use what God,
Oh.
but I didn't let it stop there because that level of grief and the pain that I had because it lasted for quite a while. If it
Yeah.
only helped me, it's all in vain. As I said, when my brother's service, so many people talked about, how he helped them, how he
Yeah.
encouraged. So I'm like, well, if you really love your brother and you're feeling some kind of way about that, how can you honor him? He lived a life of serving others.
Yeah.
I've always been a giver, reaching out to help other people. So I said, well, what greater way then? So what I've chosen to do after several tweaks and going back and forth and looking at what is it that I like to do? What is it that I really want to do? I've
Yeah.
opted to really niche down on helping mothers triumph over trauma and grief so they can live in peace and enjoy life again because that's what I realized was needed, and so many other mothers were out there needing and hurting from. And
Yeah.
when I say triumph over trauma and grief, live in peace, what I mean by that is just what I said. How do you flip the way that you're looking at that?
Mhm.
What is going to take control of you? Now we're human. When we lose someone that we love, we are going to hurt. So I'm not saying,
Mhm.
sweep it up the rug. But what
Mhm.
I'm saying is allow yourself to go through that process. But then at the same time, take the necessary steps to still enjoy the life that you have and enjoy those that
Mhm.
are. And that's what I've chosen to do with the pain and the grief that I have gone through is to then help other mothers so that their children can have a better and brighter future so that it gets cut off. And if you're able as a mother to model what healthy grief looks like, what it feels,
Mhm.
then your children will better be able to handle grief when it comes to them, because we all will go through it at some
Mm.
point. It's
Mhm.
that we can avoid. So I
Mhm.
had the mothers champion them and encourage them, hey, we can do this, we can get through this. What are some strategies that you can use? And just go through the process,
Mhm.
acknowledging what you're experiencing, putting a name to it. How do you name it? And then once you've named it, identify the emotions that are going along with it. How do you identify those emotions? I work with the moms to help them really identify and to differentiate what feeling is what, because once you can
Mhm.
name something, you know how to address it, and then you can use the proper tools. Because if you're trying to address one thing and it's something else, there's a tool and a skill set that you use when you're dealing with one emotion, but it's not the same for the other emotion. So how do you identify them,
Mm.
and how do you then use the tools? And then I work with moms to help them identify, what are some of the things that work for you for this step? How can we get from
Yeah.
here to there? And God has really blessed me in that area. So whether it's with group coaching, whether it's individual coaching, and He's
Mhm.
blessed me on several occasions to have an opportunity to speak both
Mhm.
nationally, internationally, about His goodness, about His faith. I'll never forget.
Mhm. Mm.
And you minister, and we
Mm.
were. And I was responsible at that time for ministering to the children. And of course, if the children were there, some of the mothers were there. And we talked about faith and the
Mhm.
power in faith. And some of the children that were sick, and they believed when they heard, they believed because we talked about belief and how that happened. And I kid you not, some of those children, when we first started, they were sick and they were bent over in pain and moving slow. But after they heard that message and they understood the love of Jesus Christ and the healing power that comes from Him,
Mhm.
these
Mhm.
running around and playing. And the mothers, I was talking with them and telling them, it's important for you to be able to model this for them and continue
Yeah.
this message where I'm going. And like the light in their eyes and the hope that they had, it was a total transformation that I will never forget. And
Uh-huh.
that's
Wow.
things that like I have done, and even like with some of
Yeah.
my coaches, the one in particular, because as a woman of God, we are nothing apart from Him.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he's given us everything that we need. And sometimes we have to reach out for help. So I encourage people, whether you need a life coach like myself, if you need a
Mhm.
therapist, and sometimes you need a combination of both, because a therapist's job is very different than what I do. And what I do is very different than a therapist. But I can walk alongside of you and cheer you on and help you identify your goals. And I did a 13-week program with one particular person, and it's amazing. I was so thankful. She came back with a testimony and she said, Valerie, I just can't thank you enough, because people are saying even your eyes are smiling now. And the people that are really close to her, there's something different. They
Mhm.
never would have responded this way. How did you do that?
Mhm.
And she shared with them, I've been working with this life coach and it really made a difference. And I'm just thankful that from all of that pain,
Wow.
God used me to not only bring healing to myself, because I had to reach
Mhm.
out for help
Mhm.
after.
Mhm.
And then there were other situations that I've walked through since then. I'm actually still kind of walking through something now. I had an incident with a TSA worker who was very inappropriate in their job. I'll just say that I was going through a checkpoint
Mm.
and I was violated. So
Mm.
that again was something that kind of drew me back, and I was very absent. I couldn't even wear the same clothes I was wearing that day. I don't even own those clothes anymore. I threw them away.
Mm.
And I walked through that process. I'm still walking through it. And what I want people to understand, when you're going through a trial, when you've experienced trauma, when you have grief, it changes you. And it's okay.
Mhm. Mhm.
We have this misconception that we have to go back to being that version of ourselves that we were.
Mhm.
That's realistic. When I lost my brother,
Mhm.
I lost a piece of myself. It changed me. When
Mhm.
I was sexually assaulted by that TSA worker,
Mhm.
that changed me. It changed how I travel anymore even. I don't like, you see I wear purple. I've always loved purple, but it was because they saw my purple boots and my purple hair that they were
Mhm.
able to identify me in a video.
Mm.
So I will never travel without purple footwear. So it's like, how what are those things
Mhm.
you can do? That's how I help mothers. Like, what are those things that you can do to reclaim your power? I cannot change the fact that I was violated. I can't,
Mhm.
as much as I want to, and as much as I wish that it would not have happened, I can't change that. But I'm working through still the process, because even though I'm a life coach and I have these skills, I'm human.
Mhm.
And sometimes I need help. And that's what I did. I reached out for help.
Mhm.
What are those things though that you can do to reclaim your power? What are those things that you can do? Because the reality is, if I'm going to continue speaking, if I'm going to continue seeing clients and having wanting to do workshops and trainings, it's going to require me to travel from time to time.
Mhm.
Again, I could choose, do I never travel again? Do I never fly again? Which for a year, I
Mhm.
did not. You weren't getting me on a plane. When my
Mm.
fly through the airport, went into panic mode.
Mhm.
I'm like, "Oh my gosh, was you gotta do this, you gotta do this." And I was a wreck. She was probably like, "Mom, stop blowing up my phone." But what are some of those things that you can do to reclaim as much of your life back, but understanding that you have been changed,
Mhm.
understanding there's a new way and a new version of you now, and being okay
Mhm.
with that, and not only being okay, but almost rejoicing because, and again, I'm not saying rejoice over what was done because that would be full,
Mhm.
but embrace your new self so that you can live in peace and enjoy life again. Because
Mhm.
what I learned through walking through this particular journey was, the more I didn't travel, the more that I stopped doing things, the more power I gave the perpetrator.
Mm.
But when
Yeah.
I had to do a lot of work emotionally and mentally. And it took a lot of prayer, a lot of scripture reading, and a lot of surrounding myself with the right people to encourage me, to get me back on a path where now, if I go on a plane, now there are certain things that I do now that I never would have thought about before,
Mm.
but I can go on a plane and I still have somewhat of a reaction, and I it's always going to be something that I'm thinking about, but I can at least get on it now, and I can go
Mhm.
and I can sit down.
Mhm.
Also taking steps to minimize that event happening again. Now, when I say I've
Mhm.
taken steps to minimize it, I'm not saying that I did anything to contribute to it, because there are some people who might misunderstand and say, well,
Mhm. Mhm.
what part did you do? No, things happen to us that we have no control over. Mamas, things happen in our life that we have no control over, that are not pleasant. But it doesn't mean that you've done anything. But what it does mean is that you can still look even at that negative situation, give God praise.
Mhm.
You can still look at that situation and learn from it, because if we're lifelong learners, if we're really about growing, and if
Yeah.
we really
Yeah.
care for our families, we can learn from every situation. We can learn to be even better. We
Yeah.
can good. We can learn what not to do.
Yeah.
Any situation, it's all in how you look at that situation. It's not going to
Yeah.
happen. It's not going to happen right away, but in time, with the proper help, with the proper supports, with prayer first and
Yeah.
foremost.
Yeah.
God called us to be overcomers, and that's what it's like, I've
Yeah.
walked through much in life. I mean, I've just told you about 2 different things. Well, 3. There have been so many things that I've walked through in life, but because of God, I'm able to overcome. And so I
Yeah.
take all of that and I share that as a professional with the life coaching, like I said, with the speaking. I also lead women's Bible study. That is just something that I do. I do that as part of my church. And it's
Yeah.
amazing things that many of the women walk through, but God allows me to be able to be there for them. So whether it's you,
Yeah. Wow.
they're a part of the church, or
Yeah.
if you know what, I need something and I'm willing to invest in myself, I will come alongside of you as a life coach. Whether it's, if you're local, I can do in person, I will do a walking session. I love those
Mhm.
because steps in.
Oh,
uh,
okay. Oh,
we
wow.
public location. We can meet in an
Yeah.
office, or I can even do Zoom. And to
Yeah.
help support others on that journey, one of the things I had really been praying about, and I released a year ago for Mother's Day, was the self care journal for mothers. I don't know if you
Okay.
call the
Oh,
MX
yeah.
Care Journal for Mothers, and in it, it's MX5 because there are 5 M's in our life that God
Mm.
spoken to me about, that really help and have the ability to transform our mindset, that have the ability to help us physically, that have the ability to help us spiritually. And so even just taking note of those 5 M's. So the way the journal is designed is you will write about each one of the M's, and then you'll
Mhm.
share your reflections. And then at the end of the week, you'll come up with a summary for each week. If you are honest with yourself, by the time you go through the journal, you've just created your self-care plan.
Oh, okay. Oh, wow.
Yes. Meditations and scripture is definitely one
Okay.
of those M's.
Yeah.
Now, when I say meditation,
Oh,
especially as a woman of faith, I'm not talking about the new version of meditation. I'm talking about the biblical version where you sit still, you
yeah.
speak to God, you make your request known, you make your petition to Him, you share what's on your heart and your mind,
Yeah.
and you sit and you wait for Him,
Yeah.
because He does still speak to us even today.
Yes. I totally agree. Yeah.
I work with moms to help them understand that process and how to do that. We go through scriptures to help guide the meditation, to help you form your words, because as believers, we're told to pray the word of God back to God for His.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
And I say it's kind of like when on your parenting journey, which is one of the services that I provide when you're parenting your children. If you say, we're going to go to the store and I'll buy you the candy, sometimes we get tired, and later you might think, I don't really want to, but I'm just going to see how important this is to my child. It's not
Mhm.
that you got, but you want to hear your child, because when they come and say, well, mom, you said you were going to take me to the store. I'm ready to
Mhm.
go to the store. You're moved to do so. That's how
Mhm.
Father is with us. When we remind him, you told me I can carry
Mhm.
all my worries and cares on you because you care for me, God. So I need you to take
Mm.
it away from me in Jesus' name. And he will do it because that's what his word says. That's what he wants us
Mhm.
to do.
Oh,
And
wow.
help mothers through that process. Like, how are you going to, when you're going through your grief journey, sometimes you're short and you're irritable.
Yeah. Yeah.
Kind of facts. I know any mom can relate to that, even if you haven't gone through something
Yeah.
traumatic. That's just
Yeah.
part of it. So, how do you deal with that? How do you navigate through that so that your children are still being able to get what they need? Because we know from psychology and research that, especially the preschool up to like fifth, those are the 7 years old. Those are the formative years for children. Neglect is one of those things that's referred to as an adverse childhood experience. If you're
Oh,
going,
okay.
you're not able to be there. And that's what I saw that I was doing with my children. I was basically emotionally neglecting them, not intentionally,
Yeah.
but when it comes to neglect, intention doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Children can see that. And
Yeah.
I,
Yeah.
it was an impact on children. So I had to work on myself and push past. Now, thankfully, my husband was there and he was able to intervene some. But as
Mhm.
the primary
Mhm.
caregiver, as the mother,
Mhm.
they loved their dad and they appreciated that, but they needed their mom too.
Mhm.
How do you work through that so that your children aren't being impacted? Because what we do as mothers today impacts our children of tomorrow.
Mm.
And it impacts the societies that our children will grow up in and
Mhm.
contribute to or not contribute to based on the things
Mhm.
that we are doing. It's not to say that they don't have a chance at being healthy, because we know that the
Mhm.
intervention of a positive adult can make the
Mhm.
difference and translate into positive childhood experiences, which will then help a child nurture and grow to be a productive citizen in society. But if we're talking about optimizing the outcomes for our children, providing them with the best opportunities, being the best parents that God has called us to be, because our children are gifts from God. And we're
Mhm. Yeah.
our gifts well. So we are supposed to steward our children just like Hannah
Mhm.
raised
Mhm.
Samuel, and she gave him back,
Mm.
committed to raise him in a godly way and to let him be raised under God. That's
Mhm.
what we're called to do as godly mothers. So how do we do that in the midst of grief? And so that's why I've chosen also the preschool through school age, because those years are the formative years. Those are when our children really need us. And that's when we have
Mm.
the opportunity to really pour inside of them and shape their
Mm.
future. And my thought process then was like pouring into mothers. Hey, you know what? If we can pour into mothers, and if I can help the mother help herself, I'm also helping her children. And
Yeah.
by and helping the children, then those blessings pour over into future generations. And perhaps then we won't have the situations of the Stevens, because what I didn't mention is for quite a while, not only did I lose my brother, but I was blaming the women that he was involved with, because some of the women, they would know his trigger and they would do it. We were raised in a Christian, godly home, but I go back to, who do you surround yourself with and what are you exposed to?
Yeah.
Unfortunately,
Yeah.
he was exposed to drugs as a teenager. It was in his friend's home and they were experimenting. And he, as a teenager, he and his friend experimented with it and he got hooked like that and could never break free.
Oh.
Ended
Oh,
up,
that's sad.
yeah, as a helper, he would reach out to help other people because he was like, well, nobody's there for her. She doesn't have any family. Focus on
Mhm.
yourself. He
Mhm.
couldn't help himself. He would always help someone. And instead of them helping them up, instead they would put a foot on his neck and push him further down.
Oh. Oh.
My thought process was, and what I prayed about was, you know what? If I can help even just one mom raise her daughter in a godly way so she's not the kind of woman who is bitter
Mhm.
and who goes out and
Mhm.
tears someone else down, I've
Mhm.
done it too. The hope is
Mhm.
to her, because we want to see families healed and whole. And we know that as women, as mothers, we are the heartbeat of the family many times. We are influencers and influential. If you look at Adam and Eve, Eve influenced Adam. So
Mhm.
if through my coaching, I'm able
Mhm.
to help mothers be influential in a positive way, not only are we advancing the kingdom of God, but we're restoring a family, we're helping a child grow up healthy and whole, and we're helping to contribute to society and lead more souls to Christ.
Oh, wow. I like that. Oh, you've just said so much good stuff all the way here about, especially that just this last little bit, like, because you don't realize how much that does affect, like you said, with raising the child and how that affected and for your brother and the things that he experienced and went through. And so that's so important. Um,
Yeah.
Reaching the children and you witness ministering to those mothers that are raising, yeah, of those children. Yeah.
Because my children, like, they would
Oh.
come and like, you're always tired. You don't have time for us. And then it was like, am I your real child? Do you even?
Oh,
And they were too young to understand that I love you very much, but I'm hurting. And
yeah.
I can barely breathe some days.
Yeah.
And you want me to come and play with you.
Yeah.
Once in a while, that's okay, because y people need time alone. So every now and then as well, but when it was the pattern and it was every single day and I wasn't there and then we were sitting at the table, I'm either not saying anything or hardly speaking. When they notice that I'm curled
Hmm.
all in every day, I'm in the same place, it's probably not good, and they noticed that the quality of their meals was kinda going down, and we were starting to eat out a lot because I just didn't have the energy even in the midst of
Hmm.
COVID, because then after I started coming out, that was when COVID came, and so it was like, "Man, I'm just now trying to get back together." So it took a lot of work to get through that, but as a result of the work that I had done when COVID was in full force and everything shut down, I had done the work, and even though it was still a struggle, I was able to be there for my kids, make fun for them, make plans. We started to then form our little circle, and it was like, okay, these are the things that we're going to do to sustain ourselves and really just keep them stimulated and activated. And it was hard
Hmm.
because midst of that, of course, now I'm thinking, man, my brother, like, what would he be doing and how would this impact him? And but he's not here anymore.
Mhm. Mhm.
So drawing from those skills to then transfer that to help my children, to helping the neighbors and the other women that were in the neighborhood, like in our little circle, it was just transformative really to see, man,
Yeah.
who I was then and who I definitely who I am today, but who I was then and then who I was like once I started pulling up and doing all that work and saying, okay, now you have all of these skills. You're not using them. You've been trained for this. And I would literally
Yeah.
have conversations. Yes, I was trained for this, but not for myself.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
Oh,
but I'm human. Um, yeah, I know my kids need me, but I need me too, and I can't even be here for myself.
yeah.
To then
Yeah.
finally getting to the point of, do you trust God or do you not?
Mhm.
And remind me, all that guilt that you carried, you're not so powerful that you can take someone's life by your mere words.
Mhm.
And when God spoke that to me about, you're not so powerful to have made that happen, it was like literally a weight lifted off of my shoulders. Because
Mm. Okay.
when you're going through hard times, you can
Yeah.
carry you can carry the lies of the enemy,
Yeah. Yeah.
but when you learn how to peel back the
Oh.
when you learn how to uncover the truth, and it's a process that requires work. It's not something you would think that, well, that makes no sense. But you forget you're in trauma mode or
Yeah.
you're going grief, you're not thinking straight. Instead of thinking from your logical mind, you're thinking from your primitive mind, you're from your brain stem, which is just like the basic breathing and things like that. And there were days that I couldn't even do that.
Mhm.
And you learn the process of how to trigger your mind to move you from here back up to here so you're able to think with clarity, so you can think from a reality base, for you can think from a biblical base. Then you can start to unpeel that onion skin, so to speak, and say, wait a minute, this is not true. You mean I've been living under that lie? Because we all know that grief is one of the, guilt is one of the stages
Mhm.
of,
Mhm.
but it's based on not reality,
Mhm.
thing that we do to ourselves. But even in the situation that I had just shared, one, I didn't kill my brother. I was 600 miles away.
Mhm. Mhm.
Reality is there was a level of choice that he had in his addiction. After a certain point, yes, it takes a hold.
Mhm.
Your brain is chemically altered to that, all of that happens. And when you step away from it for a while and you go back, people tend to think that they can do the same amount that they did before and they'll be okay. But if you not, you go
Mhm.
back, it's not the same. It's just like with
Mhm.
sin. You God has delivered you and freed you, but then if you willfully go back into it, it's gonna take a hold. I think it's like 70 times 7 that it grips you.
Mm.
So how do you work through that? How do you uncover all of that? How do you block those lies? But then more importantly than that is, how do you then work through all of that to move forward?
Mhm.
Because what I'm talking about as a life coach, I'm not talking about healing because that's not what I do. I just help you to move forward. I help you come up with the process. What's the process that you're going to go through? Coming through with that process to help you so that you can help yourself, so that you can be present, healthy, and whole for your children, live that life,
Mhm.
and really truly enjoy life again. Because once you know the truth and you realize what's inside of you, you realize what things you have control over, what things you do not, and you learn the steps, you can be healthy and happy. And it will also help to reduce the stress then and the worry that you've been having over your children. Because in that time, even though I wasn't able to be there, in the back of my mind, I'm like, I'm damaging my kids because I'm not there for them. They're so young and they need me.
Mhm.
I can't be there. And I would look over at them sometimes and I would really want to do stuff and I couldn't. And then if I would hug them or they would hug me, they could feel that. Like I remember the one time my son, he was in first grade, I think. He's coming to me and he's hugging me, saying, "Mom, it's okay. Uncle Steven's in heaven. Um,
Mhm.
your first grader is coming to you. It's supposed to be the other way around."
Mhm.
But I'm glad that we had already put so much in him that he was
Yeah.
able to be that level of comfort. But
Yeah. Yeah.
the thing that pulled me to say, you know what, you need to get back this. So how do I get back that? How do
Yeah.
you get back to putting things in right order?
Yeah. Oh, wow. Oh, I really like that. Yeah. And investing and how important it is. Like you said, what you had invested in and the things that he how he was able to say that to you is because of the things you were giving him that
Mhm.
sound, yeah,
Absolutely.
advice and words of life and of hope that we have
Yeah,
in Jesus. Yeah. Yeah.
yep. It
Yeah.
makes I know not everyone believes in Jesus, but for me, that has carried me a mighty long way. I don't know how people will can really go through things without
Yeah.
having gives hope. He gives restoration. He gives healing. He gives peace. He
Uh,
gives joy. And when you're living a life for him and you're committed to him, you can see how he connects the dots and how he's been with you every step of the way. And you
yeah.
see, look back over the word because, like, my dad used to teach us too, and my mom teaches us, study the word to show thyself approved.
Yeah.
And when you
Yeah.
have the word inside of you, it becomes alive. Like, there have been times I've
Yeah.
read and it said one thing to me, but then when I would look back at it later, I'm like, I read this same scripture, but I didn't get that out of it before. But it was applicable
Hmm.
to the situation that I was walking through at the time.
Hmm. Hmm.
And it's just been a help. It's been a help for my children.
Hmm.
And that's what I weave into the coaching that I do. And even when I'm doing secular speaking engagements, because it's who I am, it's not just something that I do, it's who I am.
Hmm.
It comes out. Now, sometimes it's more obvious than others, but it's always woven in. And I've never had an event where someone didn't come to me and say, "Are you a believer?" I could tell that because it was such hope and really spoke to me and wanted me to do more. And it really encouraged me and motivated me. And I
Oh,
have, it's not me, it's the God in me because that's
yeah.
who is in me. And that's who and what dictates everything I do and say. When my and they're rejoicing and they're praising me. Oh, you did so much and you were there for me. Again, I appreciate it and I thank you because I was the willing vessel. But I always want people to understand it's the God that is in me because he is the reason
Yeah.
why I live and he's the reason
Yeah.
why I'm here today.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, wow. That's
Yeah,
amazing. I still have all that you shared. Our conversation has been so fun, and I think really that'd be a really encouragement, and inspiration to those listening that
yeah,
have gone through stuff. Yeah, like how you've took all those situations for your pain and stuff, and have turned it into purpose only with God. Yeah,
absolutely,
and what you're doing. So yeah.
absolutely.
Well, I enjoyed that. Is there any kind of last things that you might want to just share here before we close? Anything you want to say or track them to anything? I will have any links that you want to share in the description.
Yeah.
Um,
Sure. Well, again, like I said, if you're a mother who is walking through, or if you're feeling stuck, if you feel like, I feel like I've overcome this trauma, I've healed, but I'm still stuck here, I would love the opportunity to just work with you. So you can visit my website at thevoiceofnewbeginnings.com. What I like about that, on there, it's called the MX5 Self Care Shop. I've got curated
okay.
candles. I love the candles because when
Okay.
I have things to do, there are certain fragrances. I have eucalyptus mint, and then I also love the lemon rosemary. They help me to really focus.
Oh wow.
I use those, but they are also very intentional for helping you, whether it's focus, relaxation, concentration, if you need to study, if you have a child who is like really antsy and you want to do it with your child, those fragrances, and sometimes you don't even have to burn them. You can even just take the lid off.
Hmm.
Fragrance is enough. And then I also, like I said, I have the MX5 Self Care Journal for mothers. This is
Hmm.
available on, and
Okay.
you can go to my website. There's a link there for the MX5 Self Care Journal for mothers if you want to do that. And again, if you're interested in working with me or having me speak at one of your events, I would love the opportunity to work with you to help not only transform your life, but transform your team if you're an organization and those around.
Hmm. Oh wow. Good. All right. They need to reach out to you. Hey, great. Yeah, Valerie Jackson, just thank you again for being with here and all the best and just all that you're doing for empowering women that are going through these kind of things, that there is peace and a very fulfilling life and for their children.
Thank
So
you,
thank
May.
you. Okay. Take care. God bless and all the best to everyone for another week, and I'll be back here next Monday, Lord willing. So, all right, take care. Thanks,
Thank you
Valerie.
so much.